A symbol of immense power, abundant wealth, and far-reaching influence, Russia's energy sector was once a global behemoth, yet presently, fractures are visibly expanding beneath its very core. Consider the possibility that the network of pipelines that forged a vast empire might now be accelerating its decline. Behind the facade of a nation overflowing with natural resources lies a narrative of profound mismanagement, stifling sanctions, and an economy gradually unraveling. Welcome to our channel, a fresh voice dedicated to delivering profound and impartial analysis of the pivotal occurrences that are shaping our world. Should you value clarity over the din of noise, we encourage you to subscribe. In this particular video, we shall unearth the obscure dynamics that are propelling Russia's energy crisis to the very edge. Stay tuned to gain a comprehensive understanding of the implications for both Russia and the international community. How precisely are Ukrainian strikes aimed at targeting Russia's crucial energy lifeline? The tactical incursions initiated by Ukraine targeting Russian energy infrastructure signify a notable development within contemporary asymmetric warfare. By deploying cost-effective technologies, like compact drones, Ukraine has achieved the disruption of vital operations within Russia's energy domain. The drones deployed by Ukraine have impacted 18 Russian oil refineries this year, collectively representing a capacity of 3.9 million barrels. This calculated emphasis on targeting energy infrastructure not only inflicts harm on Russia's economy, but also hinders its military logistics, due to the fundamental role of energy in sustaining battlefield operations. Ukraine's dependence on economical drones demonstrates strategic cleverness. Improvised explosive devices delivered through these contraptions have sparked considerable fires and damage across refineries, storage depots, and power plants. Analysts from the Kiev Independent emphasize that this inexpensive strategy has caused substantial damage, amounting to millions of dollars, significantly stressing Russia's already strained resources. The decision to specifically target energy infrastructure directly undermines Russia's war endeavors, since fuel shortages constrain the mobility of tanks, trucks, and aircraft. These strikes reveal Ukraine's capability to exploit minimal resources to produce maximum disruption, forcing Russia to utilize antiquated equipment and substitute supply routes. The effectiveness of these incursions goes far beyond immediate damage, as Russia's dependence on Belarus for refined oil imports accentuates the depth of the crisis, both from an economic and symbolic perspective. In addition, these sanctions intensify the challenges, further isolating Russia from essential technology needed to maintain its energy infrastructure. Global reactions to Ukraine's approach are vastly diverse. Western commentators, including those at Le Monde, view these incursions as undeniable proof of Ukraine's strategic brilliance. However, Russian state media entities such as TASS criticize these actions as escalatory, accusing Ukraine of targeting civilian infrastructure while masking it as a military necessity. Meanwhile, China's Global Times has encouraged a de-escalation, proposing that these strikes could worsen mistrust and hinder potential future negotiations. The strikes by Ukraine on energy have exposed vulnerabilities in Russia's infrastructure and economy, therefore challenging its long-term viability within the conflict. While these strikes showcase Ukraine's adaptability and determination, they also raise substantial concerns regarding the potential for escalation and wider ramifications for regional stability. This situation highlights the interdependent nature of energy and military strategy, serving as a pivotal case analysis in the complexities of modern warfare. By strategically focusing on the energy infrastructure, Ukraine is disrupting both the functional and symbolic foundations of Russia's military strength. Whether or not these attempts will produce long-term benefits or initiate further escalation remains ambiguous, reflecting the overall uncertainty of the ongoing conflict. Viewpoints on these developments vary throughout the globe, thereby underlining the intricate and multifaceted nature of modern geopolitical challenges. Are the sanctions crippling Russia's energy sector beyond the point of recovery? Ukrainian strikes against Russia's energy infrastructure have delivered a significant setback, but Western-imposed sanctions have intensified the crisis, targeting critical segments of Russia's energy sector. These sanctions have disrupted production, exports, and long-term planning, creating complications that threaten the sector's overall sustainability. Sanctions have considerably impacted Russia's operational capability, by restricting access to advanced technology and equipment essential for maintenance and innovation. For instance, the Lukoil refinery encountered delays lasting several months while trying to repair a gas compressor, all due to the unavailability of specialized parts, a task that would typically take a few weeks with Western knowledge. Russian engineers have been struggling to maintain outdated equipment, which resulted in further vulnerabilities. The imposed sanctions have also reshaped Russia's energy export markets, and in 2021, Europe purchased 83% of Russia's gas exports, which represented 46% of its demands. However, these markets are now inaccessible. In response, Russia has turned to clients like China and India, however at a steep cost. These countries are demanding notable discounts, reducing profit margins to historic lows. Analysts estimate these discounted sales and increased logistical costs have cost Russia billions of dollars yearly, which is depleting federal revenues that once relied on energy exports for 45% of its budget in 2021. This loss of revenue has had ripple effects as inflation, already heightened by war-related disruptions, continues to surge, while the Kremlin is encountering growing financial strain while funding domestic programs and military expenditures. The current situation has weakened Russia's financial stability and bargaining power in international trade. As noted by the New York Times, for example, China and India have been exploiting Russia's economic vulnerability to dictate trade agreement terms, which has diminished Moscow's global influence. International viewpoints on sanctions vary greatly. Western analysts see them as a successful strategy to diminish Russia's global power and war financing. The Kyiv Post emphasizes how sanctions have forced Moscow into difficult decisions between military needs and economic stability. Conversely, Russian media outlets like TASS frame sanctions as economic aggression, while highlighting the Kremlin's adaptability and resilience. The long-term implications of the sanctions are significant. Without access to advanced technologies, the development of new oil and gas reserves faces stagnation. Historical parallels such as the financial collapse following the Soviet Union's dissolution highlight the difficulty of rebuilding under such circumstances. Experts indicate that unless sanctions are removed or bypassed, Russia's energy sector risks a downward spiral, therefore threatening its economic sustainability for the upcoming decades. What might occur when Russia's oil wells freeze over? Sanctions have undeniably changed the dynamics of Russia's energy sector by disrupting supply chains and reducing access to key technology. However, another crucial consequence is looming: the forced shutdown of oil wells. While the sanctions cause immediate logistical and financial strain, the long-term risks linked to oil well shutdowns could endanger the very foundation of Russia's energy-reliant economy. Let us examine the complexities of this challenge. The shutting down of oil wells represents a severe risk to Russia's energy sector, especially in colder regions like Siberia. Unlike temporary halts in production, these shutdowns can inflict irreparable damage to critical infrastructure. During the Soviet Union's collapse in 1989, similar shutdowns resulted in decades-long disruptions, with numerous wells remaining offline due to frozen wellheads and damaged systems. This precedent emphasizes the high risks of the current crisis. Russia's climate intensifies these challenges. The harsh Siberian winters pose a considerable risk, since freezing temperatures can solidify the oil within pipelines and wellheads. This can inflict structural damage that is not only expensive to repair, but often requires complete re-drilling. These measures are costly and time-consuming, particularly because Western expertise and technology, previously essential to these operations, are now inaccessible due to imposed sanctions. Restarting these wells under the current conditions presents even more hurdles. Extensive inspections, repairs, and the purchasing of replacement parts are needed. However, the absence of Western equipment and skilled technicians has left Russia dependent on less effective alternatives. Reports from the Kyiv Post indicate that these delays are exacerbating production losses, further stressing an already overextended energy sector. Each oil well shutdown has repercussions throughout the broader economy. Beyond the immediate loss of production, these disruptions reduce future capacity, affecting income streams that are essential for government funding. Analysts from Le Monde caution that these losses could create a ripple effect, destabilizing public finances and diminishing Russia's ability to sustain long-term operations. The geopolitical ramifications of these shutdowns are also considerable. Historically, Russia's energy dominance has served as the cornerstone of its geopolitical impact. However, the forced reduction in output weakens its influence while negotiating with clients like China and India. Additionally, diminished production capacity diminishes Russia's credibility as a dependable energy provider, thus potentially opening the door for competitors like the US and Middle Eastern nations to seize a bigger share of the market. From an international point of view, opinions on these challenges differ. Western analysts highlight the structural inefficiencies that have long plagued Russia's energy sector, emphasizing how an excessive dependence on aging infrastructure has compounded its vulnerabilities. Conversely, Russian state media entities like TASS argue that these challenges are temporary and emphasize the resilience of domestic energy policies, thus framing the issue as an opportunity for self-reliance. The forced shutdown of oil wells is not merely a technical problem. It is a critical vulnerability that highlights the fragility of Russia's energy sector. With the added pressure of sanctions and the absence of Western expertise, the long-term consequences of these shutdowns could restructure Russia's economic and geopolitical landscape. While various viewpoints frame the issue differently, the consensus is obvious. The challenges are immense, and tackling them will demand unprecedented investment, innovation, and international cooperation, an unlikely prospect under the current circumstances. How is Russia's energy crisis undermining its war efforts? The systemic challenges that stem from oil well shutdowns and infrastructure damage go beyond economic repercussions. They strike at the very heart of Russia's capacity to sustain its war efforts, since energy resources are dwindling. The strain on military operations is increasingly apparent, creating a ripple effect that influences both battlefield dynamics and civilian stability. Russia's ongoing energy crisis has had a direct and profound impact on its military capabilities, as highlighted by numerous reports. The disruption of oil refineries and fuel supply chains has significantly limited the mobility of tanks, trucks, and aircraft on the battlefield. The Kremlin's decision to prioritize fuel for military use over civilian energy needs highlights the critical nature of the current situation. However, this approach has ignited domestic dissent as energy shortages permeate Russian society. Ukrainian strikes on refineries and storage depots have worsened these logistical problems. By targeting vital energy infrastructure, Ukraine has disrupted Russia's ability to maintain a consistent fuel supply for its military operations. Reports indicate that these attacks have compelled Russia to utilize alternative sources, including refined oil imports from Belarus. For a nation once hailed as an energy superpower, this dependence is a strategic and symbolic blow. The strain is apparent on the front lines. Russian forces have reportedly experienced delays in resupplying armored divisions, with some units unable to deploy effectively because of fuel shortages. According to the Moscow Times, these constraints have limited offensive operations, particularly in regions like Donetsk and Zaporizhia. The lack of fuel also hinders swift troop movement and the transportation of critical supplies, which further diminishes combat effectiveness. Beyond logistical concerns, the energy crisis has weakened Russia's ability to exert power. For example, dependence on aging infrastructure and outdated equipment has amplified the difficulties faced by the military. Without sufficient resources to repair or replace damaged assets, Russia's operational ability continues to deteriorate. Analysts from Le Monde suggest that the diminished availability of fuel and energy has also limited the scale of aerial campaigns, since aircraft rely heavily on consistent fuel supplies for sustained operations. Domestically, the energy crisis has inflamed tensions within Russian society. The Kremlin's prioritization of military needs over civilian energy consumption has resulted in widespread dissatisfaction. Citizens encountering blackouts and heating shortages during severe winters are increasingly questioning the government's resource allocation decisions. This reduction in public confidence poses a long-term challenge to Russia's capacity to maintain internal stability while waging a prolonged conflict. The impact of the energy crisis on Russia's military highlights the interdependence of logistical, operational, and societal pressures. As Ukraine continues to target critical infrastructure and Western sanctions continue to take their toll, Russia's ability to sustain its war efforts remains uncertain. This dynamic not only affects battlefield outcomes, but also shapes broader geopolitical implications, therefore underscoring the far-reaching consequences of energy dependence in modern warfare. Can Russia endure the long-term fallout from its energy collapse? Russia's energy crisis represents more than just an immediate challenge. It is a long-term threat to the nation's financial stability and political coherence. As energy revenues decline and infrastructure deteriorates, the cascading consequences are changing Russia's domestic and international status. Sanctions and restricted market access have severely reduced this crucial income stream. Forced to sell at steep discounts to China and India, Russia's profit margins have plummeted, with annual losses estimated in the billions. This has limited funds for public programs and military expenditures, thus worsening financial pressures on the Kremlin. Infrastructure degradation compounds these problems. Shutdowns of Siberian oil wells risk permanent damage, reminiscent of the Soviet collapse, when frozen wellheads rendered facilities inoperable for decades. Without Western expertise and technology, restarting these wells becomes a costly and prolonged process, further straining economic recovery attempts. Russia's inflation has reached 99.5% in 2024, according to new weekly data showing that the consumer price index rose by 0.33% in the week leading up to December 23rd. The statistical agency Rosstat reports that rising prices are eroding purchasing power, thus fueling public discontent and unrest, particularly in regions heavily reliant on energy revenues. Domestically, the crisis has eroded public trust in the Kremlin. State-controlled media continues to emphasize resilience, but visible shortages and economic hardships tell a different story. Independent reports highlight growing protests and strikes, particularly in resource-dependent regions like Siberia and the Far East. These areas, already facing infrastructure decay and economic disparities, are increasingly vocal about their grievances, thus increasing the risk of heightened regional tensions. Internationally, Russia's diminished energy dominance weakens its geopolitical influence. Energy exports, once a powerful bargaining tool, are losing their potency as Europe diversifies its energy sources. This shift weakens Russia's influence in crucial regions like the European Union and the Middle East. Analysts suggest that emerging partnerships with Asia, particularly China, provide some relief, but often on unfavorable terms, which further diminishes Russia's global standing. While Russian media frames the crisis as an opportunity for adaptation, Western analysts see it as a turning point that could accelerate Russia's decline as a global power. The combined effects of sanctions, market losses, and systemic inefficiencies paint a bleak picture of a nation struggling to maintain its footing. Structural reforms could address these challenges, but such changes are unlikely under the current leadership. Russia's energy crisis is not just about declining oil and gas revenues. It is a symptom of deeper systemic issues that threaten its economic, political, and geopolitical stability. The long-term impacts of this crisis will shape Russia's trajectory for years to come, leaving observers to question whether the nation can adapt before its challenges become insurmountable. Is there a path out for Russia's crumbling energy sector? Russia's energy sector, once a cornerstone of its global influence, is now under tremendous pressure. Years of underinvestment compounded by sanctions and geopolitical isolation have exposed critical vulnerabilities. The path to recovery appears treacherous, demanding structural reforms, modernization, and international collaboration, none of which are currently in sight. Rebuilding damaged infrastructure is a formidable undertaking. Oil fields, pipelines, and refineries are in poor condition due to decades of neglect. The forced shutdown of oil wells in Siberia risks permanent damage, because freezing wellheads can require extensive re-drilling efforts spanning decades. Historical precedents, such as the post-Soviet collapse, illustrate the immense difficulty of restoring capacity without external expertise. Sanctions have further constrained these efforts by cutting off access to advanced Western technology that is essential for Arctic and Siberian operations. While Russia has turned to domestic solutions and partnerships with nations like China, analysts from the New York Times note that Chinese technology often lacks the precision needed for complex energy operations, which therefore jeopardizes long-term production. The loss of European markets has forced a pivot to Asia. Purchases in India, alongside others in China and Turkey, have only been lured by significant discounts, at times topping $30 a barrel. Analysts from Le Monde estimate that these discounts cost Russia billions annually, eroding revenues that are critical for financial stability and military funding. Furthermore, China's dominant negotiating position, exemplified by delays in the Power of Siberia 2 pipeline, highlights the asymmetric nature of these partnerships. These dependencies reduce Russia's leverage in the global energy market. Domestically, the crisis has intensified economic hardships. Inflation, driven by declining energy revenues, has worsened public discontent. Propaganda may obscure the severity of the current situation temporarily, but the Atlantic Council warns that prolonged economic strain could lead to broader unrest as trust in governmental policies erodes. Experts suggest that recovery depends on significant reforms, which include addressing systemic inefficiencies and rebuilding international relationships. However, the Kremlin's focus on short-term survival over long-term sustainability limits these prospects. Without resolving the war in Ukraine and recalibrating its foreign policy, Russia's energy sector may continue its downward spiral. Viewpoints vary, but the consensus highlights the urgent need for innovation and transparency to prevent deeper crises. Russia's energy crisis serves as a stark reminder that even the strongest pillars can crumble when overburdened by mismanagement, corruption, and conflict. As we have explored today, the cascading effects of sanctions, infrastructure failures, and strategic missteps have reshaped the dynamics of Russia's energy sector and its global influence. These are more than just political or economic issues. They are human stories of struggle and resilience, therefore underscoring the urgent need for a world driven by peace, cooperation, and sustainability. The content on our channel is intended for informational and educational purposes only. While we aim to provide balanced analyses on political and military subjects, the viewpoints expressed do not reflect those of any governmental organization or political entity. At our channel, we believe in shedding light on the complexities that shape our world, not to divide, but to foster understanding and inspire constructive dialogue. If today's discussion resonated with you, let us know your thoughts in the comments. What do you think lies ahead for Russia and the global energy landscape? Your viewpoint is invaluable in creating meaningful conversations. If you are enthusiastic about gaining deeper insights into the forces that drive global events, consider subscribing and joining our growing community. By subscribing, you are not just supporting thoughtful, unbiased content. You are helping to build a platform for understanding and cooperation. Together we can explore the stories that matter most and advocate for a world driven by peace, sustainability, and informed decision-making. Hit the subscribe button and let us continue this journey together. And now, let's delve into the realm of weaponry and conflict, shifting our focus from the energy sector to the hard realities of military technology and tactics. Many pivotal events are occurring across the globe, events that profoundly influence the dynamics of international relations. So let's examine these occurrences with our characteristic in-depth analysis. Before we dive into the specifics, I'd like to ask for your support. If you're enjoying our content, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your engagement is vital for helping us reach a wider audience and continue delivering these in-depth analyses. Also, I encourage you to share your location in the comments below. It's always great to see where our viewers are tuning in from. And don't forget, we will be drawing some conclusions at the end of this video, so make sure you watch till the very end. Ukraine's relentless attacks on the Russian energy infrastructure are not isolated incidents. They represent a strategic campaign that is deeply integrated with the broader geopolitical landscape. These attacks are not just about damaging facilities. They are about disrupting Russia's capacity to sustain its war machine and project influence in the region. The methods employed by Ukraine are a calculated blend of technological innovation and asymmetric warfare tactics. The deployment of relatively inexpensive drones, equipped with improvised explosive devices, is a stark contrast to the costly conventional military hardware that Russia typically relies on. This strategy allows Ukraine to inflict significant damage while minimizing its own risk and expense. The drones used in these attacks are often locally produced or modified, which further highlights the ingenuity and adaptability of the Ukrainian military. The precision with which these strikes are executed is also noteworthy. The targeted approach suggests a careful reconnaissance and planning process, which is indicative of the military intelligence Ukraine is gathering in real time. This precision also emphasizes the weaknesses that Russia has in terms of the protection of its vital energy infrastructure. The frequency of these drone attacks has had a significant impact on the functioning of Russian oil refineries and depots, disrupting the fuel supply chains that are vital for military logistics. The strikes also affect energy prices and fuel scarcity that impacts the civilian population, causing widespread discontent and further instability in Russia. The Ukrainian objective is not solely to inflict economic damage. It is also aimed at creating psychological pressure that challenges the narrative of Russian military might. These attacks, widely covered by global media, have become a symbol of resilience and resistance against the Russian aggression. They also underscore the interconnectedness of energy and military strength in the context of modern warfare. This has made the Kremlin confront a significant dilemma: how to protect vital energy assets without diverting forces away from the main battlefronts and thus weakening their positions and military strength. The tactical brilliance displayed by Ukraine in these attacks is not accidental, but the result of strategic thinking and the intelligent use of available resources and tech. The attacks serve as a stark reminder that in modern conflicts, effective warfare is not solely about massive firepower, but also about the strategic and innovative use of technology. These actions are a clear message from Ukraine that its military is capable of using asymmetrical methods to exploit weaknesses of the Russian military, demonstrating adaptability and resolve in the face of a more powerful adversary. The impact of the sanctions imposed by Western nations on Russia's energy sector cannot be overstated. These sanctions are not simply about limiting trade. They are a calculated attempt to degrade Russia's economic foundation and ability to fund its war machine. The sanctions target key technological components and specialized equipment vital for the functioning of Russian energy infrastructure, such as oil refineries, gas pipelines, and storage facilities. This includes equipment used in the Arctic and Siberian regions, which are of paramount importance to the Russian energy industry. This restriction limits Russia's ability to perform routine maintenance, conduct crucial repairs, and modernize its facilities, resulting in a decline in the overall efficiency of operations. The withdrawal of Western companies and technical expertise exacerbates the problem, as Russian engineers face the challenge of maintaining increasingly obsolete equipment. This results in significant delays in repairs, with tasks that would normally take a few weeks now stretching into months. The sanctions have also substantially altered Russia's energy export markets. Europe's dependence on Russian energy has plummeted, forcing Russia to find new buyers in Asia, particularly China and India. However, these markets demand significant discounts, greatly impacting Russia's revenue from energy exports. This reduced revenue has a cascading effect on the entire Russian economy, limiting its ability to invest in vital sectors and fund military operations. The sanctions are not just about financial losses. They are about disrupting the entire ecosystem of the Russian energy sector, which includes research and development, production, and distribution. The long-term impact of these sanctions is profound. Without access to modern technology, Russia's energy sector faces the challenge of stagnation, since it has limitations in developing new oil and gas fields. This creates a cycle of decline that is difficult to reverse, highlighting the strategic aim of sanctions, which is to weaken Russia's long-term capability and limit its geopolitical leverage. This strategic use of sanctions also demonstrates the interconnectedness of international policy and domestic economic stability. These sanctions serve as a clear message to Russia that any actions of aggression will be met with powerful financial consequences. Russia's struggle with sanctions is a demonstration that even seemingly powerful economies are vulnerable to concerted global pressure, and that strategic trade and technology control can be as effective as military force in modern geopolitical struggles. The forced shutdown of oil wells in Russia, particularly in the harsh Siberian regions, is not merely an operational challenge. It is an economic and environmental crisis that underscores the structural weaknesses of Russia's energy sector. The complexity of oil well management in these extreme conditions makes their shutdown a complex process. with major potential for long-term consequences. When these wells are not operational, the cold temperatures can cause the oil within pipelines and wellheads to freeze, leading to structural damage and costly repairs. The consequences are even more dire if the damage results in the loss of equipment within the wellbore, making a restart a difficult and expensive venture. Re-drilling is often the only option in such situations, which is a process that needs huge investments and considerable amount of time and effort. The lack of access to Western technology, due to imposed sanctions, makes these repairs and re-drilling operations much more complex for Russia. The specific Western equipment, which is ideal for working in such conditions, is not easily replaced. Russia is now forced to use older, less efficient alternatives, or rely on domestically produced technology that might not meet the required standards. These delays and inefficiencies exacerbate the economic impact of oil well shutdowns, as each shutdown decreases production and affects the overall income stream. The environmental consequences are also considerable. The freezing and thawing of pipelines can lead to leaks and spills, which result in environmental contamination in the already fragile ecosystems of the Arctic and Siberian regions. The absence of proper maintenance of these systems can worsen the environmental risks and cause long-term damage to the surrounding areas. The oil well shutdowns highlight the long-term effects of underinvestment and neglecting essential maintenance of infrastructure, which has been a recurring pattern in Russia's energy sector. This shows that short-term gains and immediate benefits are often prioritized over the sustainable management of resources and infrastructure. This is an important lesson on the importance of long-term planning and responsible resource management, especially in areas that are very sensitive to environmental and climatic factors. The consequences of Russia's energy crisis extend far beyond financial and operational issues. They deeply undermine the country's military capabilities. The strategic approach taken by Ukraine to target Russian energy infrastructure is having significant repercussions on Russia's ability to sustain its war effort. The disruptions caused by these attacks have had a direct impact on Russia's military logistics and ability to deliver fuel to the front lines. The targeted attacks on oil refineries and storage facilities are impairing the supply of fuel for tanks, armored vehicles, and aircraft. These logistical challenges cause delays in deploying forces, transporting equipment, and conducting offensive operations. The dependence on alternate sources, such as fuel imports from Belarus, is a clear sign that a once major energy exporter is now facing limitations on its own fuel supply, thus showing the effect of Ukrainian targeted attacks. Russia's strategy to prioritize fuel for military needs has resulted in shortages in civilian fuel supplies, therefore leading to increased domestic discontent and public unrest. These internal tensions make the Kremlin face the challenge of balancing its military operations with meeting the basic needs of its population. This situation puts significant pressure on Russia's leadership as they confront both a struggling military campaign and growing internal unrest, which can lead to internal instability. The decline in fuel supply is also impacting Russia's ability to project power. The restrictions on the availability of fuel and energy affect the scale and frequency of military operations. The reliability of the Russian military is also undermined, making Russia appear less capable and therefore diminishing its global influence. This combination of logistical hurdles, financial constraints, and public dissatisfaction underscores how energy is a crucial component of modern warfare. By strategically targeting Russia's energy infrastructure, Ukraine has shown a creative and adaptable approach to military strategy, thus revealing the weaknesses of Russia's military apparatus and exposing its vulnerabilities. This also demonstrates that a modern conflict is not just about brute force, but also about the strategic use of resources and exploitation of critical vulnerabilities within the adversary's infrastructure. The long-term implications of Russia's energy crisis for its overall stability and position in the world are alarming. The combination of financial losses, technological restrictions, and public discontent paints a grim picture of the country's future, which threatens its national security. The financial impact of the energy crisis is tremendous. The revenue losses due to discounted sales and a decline in production have reduced the budget for public programs and defense expenditures, which will only intensify the financial pressure on the Kremlin. The infrastructure damage caused by sanctions and neglected maintenance is difficult to fix, which further reduces production and income and leads to a cycle of decline in both the short and long term. The technological restrictions imposed by sanctions severely impede Russia's ability to modernize its energy sector, which results in a long-term challenge to their economic health. The inability to develop new oil and gas resources as well as maintain current infrastructure makes them lag behind global standards. This technological deficiency can have wide-reaching consequences in many other sectors, therefore affecting the overall potential of the Russian economy. The social implications of the energy crisis are also very significant due to the decline in living standards and growing public dissent, which puts pressure on the Kremlin to meet the public's needs in order to avoid wide-scale unrest. The Russian government, which is trying to maintain the facade of stability, is faced with an increase in public dissatisfaction, which could potentially lead to political instability. The international implications of the energy crisis are equally profound. The reduced revenue from energy exports weakens Russia's global position, as it loses its power as a major energy supplier. The diminished credibility has made its position in the international community decline, as its geopolitical influence decreases. The relationships with new partners, especially in Asia, do not provide the same benefits as the European market, because these trade agreements often come with unfavorable terms that limit Russia's economic independence. The long-term consequences of the energy crisis extend far beyond immediate financial challenges and pose a risk to the foundation of Russia's national identity. This long-term crisis may result in an irreversible decline, which will challenge its economic and political structures and its position in the global arena. The impact of this crisis highlights the complex interaction between economic, technological, and societal factors, and demonstrates how a breakdown in one sector can lead to repercussions in multiple different areas. The prospect of recovery for Russia's energy sector is not promising, which is why the situation should be taken seriously. The issues the country is facing are deep and interconnected, which means that short-term solutions are not possible. There is an obvious need for major changes in both internal policy and international relations if Russia is to solve its current problems. The rebuilding of the damaged infrastructure is a huge project that requires large investments and significant expertise that is not currently available to Russia. The sanctions imposed by the Western nations limit Russia's access to critical technology and specialist knowledge, which is a significant challenge to their recovery prospects. The underinvestment in maintenance and modernization over the past years has resulted in obsolete facilities, which are now hard to repair and operate efficiently. This means that Russia will not be able to take part in the global energy market for a long time. There is a lack of diversity in Russia's economy, which is highly dependent on energy exports. This dependence makes it vulnerable to market fluctuations and international pressure. In order to secure long-term stability, Russia needs to diversify its economic sector and decrease its reliance on energy. The long-term effects of neglecting the environment has had a long-lasting effect, since the spills and leaks caused by inadequate infrastructure require major environmental cleanup. This has negative impacts on the ecosystems in Russia's northern regions, and this requires significant effort and resources to repair. These environmental issues will also put a strain on the economy. There is a clear need for internal reform and for a significant change in the way Russian businesses are run, since it needs to adopt a more effective approach to governance and reduce corruption and mismanagement. These factors limit Russia's capabilities and impede any long-term prospects. The current geopolitical situation, including the conflict with Ukraine and the complex relationship with the Western world, is an obstacle for any significant progress. Russia needs to seek a peaceful solution to the conflict in Ukraine to improve international relations, which would help them with any economic recovery efforts. The current challenges in Russia's energy sector reveal the negative effects of geopolitical isolation and reliance on a single industry. Russia is an example of how neglect of long-term environmental and infrastructure needs can create major issues that threaten the nation's stability and position in the international arena. To conclude, let's recap the key points that we've discussed in this video. What began as a situation with global implications in the energy sector of Russia has turned into a complex web of economic, military, and geopolitical issues that not only affects Russia, but has global repercussions. The Ukrainian attacks on Russian energy infrastructure, combined with the impact of Western sanctions, have led to a significant decline in Russia's energy production and income. These events have impacted not just the economy, but the military operations and the internal stability of the nation. The sanctions imposed by Western countries have had a major impact on Russia's energy sector, limiting access to vital technology and international markets, which limits Russia's capabilities. This situation has forced Russia to turn to Asia, which has its own limitations and disadvantages. The forced shutdown of oil wells, particularly in harsh climates, highlights the long-term infrastructure neglect and environmental consequences, and has significant implications for future oil output. The issues that Russia is facing are not just financial and technical, but also impact the social and political situation, which could lead to instability in the long term. Russia's military capabilities have also been weakened due to fuel shortages and logistical difficulties, which makes their military operations less effective. This energy crisis serves as a lesson that shows that dependence on a single sector, such as energy, can make any nation vulnerable to financial and political instability. The path to recovery for Russia's energy sector is not clear and will require major internal reform, environmental cleanup, and a significant change in its foreign policy. The current geopolitical situation has complicated these issues, making the prospects for any improvement extremely unlikely. The story of Russia's energy sector is a stark reminder of the need for a diversified and sustainable economy, which can prevent any future crises. The events of recent months serve as a reminder that even the strongest pillars can fall when overburdened with conflict and mismanagement. The current state of Russia's energy sector is not just a story of economic data and political strategy, but also a story of how human choices have profound consequences, affecting lives and entire nations. The issues that we have discussed today are a reminder of the fragility of peace and the importance of cooperation and sustainability in creating a better world. We hope that this in-depth look into Russia's energy crisis and its military implications has provided a deeper understanding of the complexities of our world. This analysis shows that global events are often interrelated, where actions in one area can have far-reaching implications in another. Thank you for joining us on our channel, where we explore significant global events and shed light on the hidden forces that are shaping our world. Your support allows us to continue delivering this important content. Before we go, we ask that if you found this video insightful and informative, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with others. Also, remember to leave a comment below, letting us know your thoughts on this topic. Your engagement is really important to our channel and helps us grow and continue our work. We encourage you to stay curious, remain informed, and keep seeking knowledge so that we can create a more informed and peaceful world together. Thank you again for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video.